Hello and welcome to another Every Tuesday tutorial. In this week's tutorial, we are jumping into Procreate on an iPad and creating floral wreaths. So I'm going to walk you through my entire process, what I think about, how I make decisions as I'm putting these together, and we're going to actually create exactly what you see on screen together, step by step. So all the colors that were used in this and a few other things that I'm going to mention along the way, including the brush that I'm using that's totally free. You can pick all of those up. If you click on the link in the video description, they're all available right there for you, so you can really follow along exactly with the video. So we're just going to jump in and get started. I'm going to create a brand new document that is screen size. Just to give you the basic tools that I'm using, this is an iPad Pro. It's 12.9 inches. It's 256 gigs, which I love. And I'm using the Apple Pencil right here for everything. And the app, once again, is Procreate. Okay, so I have a brand new screen size document all ready to go. So these are the colors over here. And once again, just hit the link in the video description and I've got the color builds exactly. If you want to insert colors and you're not sure how to do that, you're just going to click down here where the value is and you're just going to type in where it says hexadecimal right here. You're just going to tap on that and you can type in your different colors. And then once you have that color put in, all you have to do is tap down here and it'll add it to your palette. If you make a mistake and you want to get rid of a color swatch, you just hold it down for a couple of seconds and you'll see delete, and you can just hit delete and get rid of it. So I also have a tutorial on creating quick color palettes if you'd like to use a different color palette than this in Procreate. So there's a link to that video tutorial as well. Okay, so we are going to color our background this darker green right here, and I've got it selected down here, and a quick way to just add it to the background, you're just going to tap and drag that color circle over there and it'll drop and fill in the entire background with that color. Okay, so since we're creating a wreath that is circular, we need a circle to use as kind of a template and a guide for us as we move along. So I'm going to grab my blue color so we can see it really well. I'm going to create a brand new layer so I don't add it to this background layer. As you are creating and building this wreath, you want to make sure you're always putting any new elements on a new layer in the document. It'll just make things more flexible later on if you want to rearrange things. You have way more options if you just keep everything separated in your layers. So I have a brand new layer to put this circle on. I've got my blue selected, and I'm just going to come over here to my brushes, and under airbrushing, I'm going to select the hard brush, and I'm going to make sure that it's a pretty good size over here. And all you're going to do is tap it once with your finger and that will add in a circle, a hard circle. And now we want to increase the size of this, so just tap on your cursor up here and now you can scale it up by just pinching and zooming out. All right. So this feels like a pretty good size. Once you're happy with that, we're going to return to our layers palette and we're just going to reduce the opacity. So anything that we draw on top of the circle, we're going to be able to see really well. So just tap on the end right here and just reduce the opacity. I think I'm going to go down to like 30%, and that feels pretty good. Okay, so now we are all set. We've got our template circle to work off of. And the first thing that I usually do when I'm creating one of these floral wreaths is I start with a base foliage layer. And my base foliage is kind of a middle ground color that I can work off of and riff off of as I'm deciding on other colors. So I will create this base foliage and everything beyond it will change in either color or scale or shape. So that's kind of how I work and establish things as I move along. Okay, so I'm going to create a brand new layer right here. I'm going to grab my mint, my light mint color right here, and I'm just going to do a really basic foliage. So I'm just going to make sure we've got our new layer. I'm going to select my monoweight brush. This is a custom monoweight brush that I created that is also available for free over on my website. So hit that link in the video description. You can download it and follow along. All right, so I've got my monoweight brush all ready to go. I'm going to grab a decent size brush so you can see it really well. So for this base foliage layer, this is what I typically do. I just draw a bunch of different stems that just kind of come around. I'm not tracing the circle exactly, which makes the wreath feel more organic by not tracing the circle. But in my own way, I am tracing the circle. I'm just kind of coming around like this with these little branches. So I'm going to come all the way around the circle and then I'll be right back. Okay, and if you're new to Procreate, you can undo anything that you've previously done by just tapping with 2 fingers. And if you want to redo it, you just tap with 3 fingers and it'll bring it back. So just a heads up about that. Okay, so I've got my base foliage kind of branches in here. So the next thing I'm going to do is actually drop that foliage, those leaves, onto this base layer. So just make sure you have the right layer selected right here. And then I'm just going to draw a really simple leaf. I'm not a realistic illustrator by any means. I doodle more than I draw. So this tutorial is all about doodling in these details, which you'll see once we start adding all these on, it becomes really beautiful the further you go and the further you layer things. So really anybody can do this. They're really basic doodles. So for these leaves, I'm just making a teardrop shape basically, and then I'm going to fill it in like this. So there's two ways that you can fill in your elements as you draw them. You can, what I just did right there, by coloring it in, or you can grab your circle color over here and just drop it in. It has to be a closed shape, but you can see that this isn't perfect all the time. On some of the edges, sometimes it leaves areas like that where you have to come in with your pencil anyway and fill it in. My rule of thumb is usually if it's pretty small, I'll just color it in like this to save time. If I have larger elements, I'll fill them in and then fill in those other little gaps later on. So I'm going to come around this, add these leaves, and then I'll be right back. So now I've got all of my leaves on my wreath, and if I want to preview it, I can just turn off that circle that I'm using as a template right here, and everything is looking really good. So now it's time to add in what I call our anchor elements, and your anchor elements are usually large leaves that kind of lift everything up. Everything kind of sits on top of them, and they're just supportive, and they're very obviously in the background, so they're colored a little lighter or a darker shade of whatever your background is. I'm using a lighter shade, but you could go either way. So I'm going to put this layer beneath my base layer, so I'm going to tap on this layer, create a new layer, so it's right underneath my base layer, and I'm going to grab this kind of tonal color that's very similar to my background color. I'm going to turn my circle back on so I've got it as my base, and all I'm going to do is come around this and draw just really big leaves, which maybe feel too big at the moment, but once we start adding on all these other different elements, you'll see how it really fills out with these. So these are my anchor elements. So I'm just going to draw a big leaf and kind of go all the way around with these big leaves. Okay, so I've got these leaves all drawn in, and don't feel bad about if you don't match up exactly by alternating. It's totally fine. Once this fills out, it won't even be noticeable. I noticed that this one's kind of hanging too far down here, so I'm going to actually erase this one out and redraw that one in. Just keep it a little tighter to my circle. All right, so this is one of those situations where I'll just pull the color and drop it in and then fill in the gaps with a pencil. So I'm just going to pull this color into these leaves, and then if I have little gaps, I'll fill them in with the pencil. So I'm going to go around and do that now. Okay, now we can preview what everything's looking like. And that's feeling really good so far. Okay, so the next thing I'll start dropping in is I will fill out my foliage a bit more and add more variety. So right now we've got these teardrop shaped leaves right here. So I'll add in more leaves, and I'm going to make these darker now to alter color. I'm going to make the weight of my brush a little thinner to adjust scale, and I'm going to be using round leaves this time to alter shape. So I'm going to come in here, and I'm actually going to put these beneath the base layer as well. So I'm just going to create a new layer above this. I'm going to grab my dark green right here, and this time I'm going to, let me reduce the size of my brush like I said I would, and I'm just going to draw in some leaves that are a little rounder, so they'll look like something like this. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Okay, so we've got our extra leaves in there, and now we can start having fun with some flowers. So I'm going to walk you through a doodle flower that I really like to create. It's super simple, anybody can do it, and it really fills out wreaths nicely. So obviously we want to alter our color, our shape, and our scale here. So with these flowers, you'll see that I've increased the scale with how far they span compared to everything else. I'm changing up the color by grabbing my blue for this, and we're going to introduce pink flowers as well. And then the shape, you'll notice right away how the shape differs. So we're going to create a new layer. It's going to be right above the layer that we just created right here. So I'm just going to create a new layer, and I've got my mono weight brush once again, and this time we're going to come in, and it's okay to overlap your other elements. You just want to make sure that you're still filling in those white space gaps. So the more you fill in those areas that are a little bit empty, the more full your wreath will become. So I'm just going to start my stem right here. Okay, so from here, what I'll do is create a new layer right on top of it, and we're going to drop in our flowers. So I'm going to grab my pink. So in order to create these flowers, what I do is I come up kind of like a tulip shape, and then I make a zigzag up at the top and then bring it down. Okay, so then the last thing that I'll do is create a new layer on top of my flowers layer. And then I'll change back to blue, and I'll actually reduce my size slightly here. And then I will make it look like they're more connected. Okay, so if you wanted to add even more details, like if you wanted to add some lines to differentiate the petals or some dots up at the top, like you could come up with something like this up at the top of your flower. You can add in all kinds of extra details. I'm going to leave those off for this one, just for the sake of time. And you can also add these wherever you have your green that we dropped in before our extra foliage. You can drop a flower bouquet off of there. I'm going to space mine out a little bit more just for the sake of time, but definitely feel free to add as many details. If you want to add more flowers in this onto your stems, you can do that too. There's a lot of freedom right here, but that's a basic flower design that really reads well as a doodle floral wreath in Procreate. So I'm going to come through, I'm going to repeat that exact same process. I'm going to come back to my stem layer right here. Okay, so we have our wreath with some flowers added in. Now we're going to add in some branches, and the branches will help to fill it out, and then we'll add in some tiny flowers as well to fill everything out. So for the branches, I'm going to create a new layer. This is underneath my base layer because whenever I begin a stem, I want it behind my base layer. So this one is going to be white, and I'm just going to come in wherever there are gaps. So there's going to be quite a few of these branches. Wherever I see some white space gaps, I'm just going to start dropping in branches, and the branches are pretty basic. Let me make this size a little larger. So they're super basic, just branches. Okay, now we've got our branches in there, and now we're going to add in some tiny flowers. So these ones are going to be on a topmost layer. So I'm just going to add a layer up here. I'm going to grab my pink, and now I'm just going to come around, and wherever I see those gaps, that's what these are for. So I'm just going to draw them in, alter the size and how many petals they have, and then I'll fill them in. Okay, so I've got my little flowers in there, and now I just need to add some centers to them. So I'm just going to create a new layer on top, grab my blue, and then just come into each one of these flowers and drop that center on there. Okay, so our wreath is pretty much done right here. This last part is totally optional. It's something that I like to do because I like to add a little extra sparkle into my wreath. So I have a metallic foil and glitter kit for Procreate. So I'm going to show you if you'd like to drop in some sparkle like I am with my silver glitter. I'm going to show you how to do that. And I also have a longer tutorial on this if it doesn't make sense as you see me do it right here. If you click on the link in the video description, there's a link directly to the tutorial. So what I'm going to do is create a brand new layer, and I'm just going to grab a brush that's a little larger. I'm keeping my color blue just so I can see things really well, but we're going to change it entirely to that silver glitter. And I'm just going to come around and put little dots around here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is add in my texture now. So I'm just going to come up to my wrench, insert a photo. I've also got a watercolor kit too, but we're going to grab from the silver glitter and then just lay it on top of your wreath. I like scaling it down so it kind of fits my wreath perfectly. Make sure you get all the little circles in there. And then what you want to do is come to your circle layer, tap on it, hit select, then select the glitter layer above it, and then hit these two little lines down here at the bottom. And that will create a new layer with the selection. So all those circles are now going to be glitter circles. So I can turn off the visibility of my glitter and of my original circles. And you can see I've got the little glitter all the way around here now, so you can see it really well. And it just adds a little extra sparkle to the entire wreath. So the last thing you want to do is just add whatever you'd like to the center of your wreath. I'm going to add in some lettering. So I'm going to grab my white. I'm going to go to the calligraphy category right here, and the streaks brush is free and it comes with Procreate. So I'm just going to use that default brush. Let me see how big my brush is. That's a pretty good size, maybe a little larger. And I'm just going to write in spring. All right, so that is how to create a floral wreath in Procreate. So once again, all the links to everything that was mentioned throughout this video are right in the video description. Just tap on that link, you'll have access to everything and be able to follow along exactly. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please subscribe and make sure to visit my website for all kinds of other bonus Procreate goodies. It's every-tuesday.com. And for more examples of Procreate artwork and doodles that you can do, check out my Instagram. My handle is @everytuesday. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next time.